This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Scientists in Tanzania call for more action on climate change in Africa. South Africa's state capture inquiry continues, with the ex-president's son taking center stage once again. And Syria slams Turkey's attack on the country's northeast as Ankara gears up for a military operation against Syrian Kurds. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. And with me is Ramanyang with a preview of your business news.
That's right, Lindy. Here's what's coming up a little later in the hour. Severe drought has taken a bitter toll on Zimbabwe's fragile economy. And hopes of a deal ahead of the UK's exit from the EU are fading rather rapidly. We'll have the details and the blame game on that particular story and plenty more coming up in a bit. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. Well, we start the hour in Tanzania, where global experts have gathered for a three-day international climate conference in Dar es Salaam. They're calling for more action to avert the effects of climate change in Africa. The event brought together scientists from various countries to brainstorm solutions. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Africa is the most vulnerable continent to global warming due to its dependence on rain-fed farming. CGTN's Daniel Kijo has more.
Climate change is a major global threat that Africa may not be ready for. This group of global experts in climate studies want to change that. Over 300 experts are at the Africa Climate Talk to discuss solutions to help the continent's climate resilience.
We are here to share expertise and share national and international research findings from different countries, and now to identify which findings would be helpful to policymakers on combating climate change in Africa.
Organizers emphasize the need to put climate at the center of development plans and to ensure adequate national and international funding to implement national climate action plans. Experts say record levels of global greenhouse gas emissions could have a serious impact on the development of Africa. Areas closest to the equator are expected to see an increase of natural disasters such as droughts and floods. The message here is that the issue of climate change is for everyone to tackle and not just scientists. Most African countries have already signed up to international climate agreements, like the 2016 Paris Climate Accord. The agreement commits wealthier countries to allocate $100 billion by 2020 to help developing countries adapt to changing climate. The Tanzanian government says the time for action is now.
My call is to all Tanzanians to ensure that we protect the environment, we protect water sources and fight deforestation. But also, we should use alternative energy so we don't damage the environment anymore.
Experts here say making ordinary Africans more aware of climate change will be the key in pushing governments to step up their response. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Ethiopian President Saleh Work has reopened the country's parliament after a week of recess. The president touched on many issues during her speech, including the construction of the Grand Renaissance Dam. She also discussed ethnic conflict and the country's upcoming elections. CGTN's Girum Chala has more.
The Ethiopian parliament members who have returned from a short break will have a lot on their plates for the next 1 year to work on. And President Saleh Work's opening speech has clearly stipulated what to expect. The reform, politics, democracy, human rights, justice, and an overall economic development are all in the to-do list.
In this new year, we are determined to strengthen our journey to an overall reform As we all know, the reform is geared by the initiative known as Midima, which is a brainchild of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Midima bases itself on three main nationwide goals. These are maintaining and scaling up best practices across the country, correcting mistakes committed over the past years and decades, and achieving the next generation's interest and benefits. Through this, Ethiopia will maintain its unity and will elevate its people's respect and guarantee prosperity.
This post-recess session of the parliament was also attended by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. His government plans to register rapid economic growth under the new homegrown economic reform plan. Here, quickly finishing the ongoing mega projects, including the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, is the focus.
The general election we are going to hold this year will base itself on three core values. First, the general elections, as much as possible, should correct the election-related errors over the past years. Second, it should be free and democratic and must be trusted and accepted. And third, it should guarantee abundant participation of politicians and the larger public. The government is fully committed to see through all this and call all stakeholders to work towards these goals.
President Sahlawork's speech has also indicated Ethiopia will stage its general elections in few months' time, as per its normal schedule.
Power distribution and minimizing power cuts are considered serious goals for this year. These will include Grand Renaissance Dam and other similar hydropower generating dams. Moreover, 10 mega projects will be started with public and private partnership. We will expand the electric infrastructure, and this will provide power to 1 million additional customers, especially in rural Ethiopia.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's administration is said to have sheer dogged determination to see the progress of Ethiopia in all aspects and soon. However, ethnic-based conflicts, issues of human rights, as well as the economic imbalance remain tough challenges hard to ignore. CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
And let's turn to South Africa now, where the state capture inquiry into allegations of corruption continued on Tuesday, with the ex-president's son again taking center stage and claiming his innocence. His lawyer spent the morning leading Duduzane Zuma, who clarified evidence he gave on day one. Angela Coppola reports from the Commission in Johannesburg.
He reminded the Deputy Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, that his commission started its life in Public Protector Thuli Madonsela's report on state capture.
I'm sitting here today. I've been mentioned in all sorts of lights. I didn't have an opportunity to give my version of events, and the basis of that report is what this whole state capture commission is about. I'm sitting here having to answer all sorts of allegations that could have been answered at that point.
Zuma, who currently lives in Dubai, says the impact of the Public Protector's report and the subsequent events on his life has been significant.
I'm looked at as a criminal. I'm looked at as this face of corruption, this guy that's plundered trillions out of this country, which is not the case, by the way. So I'd just like to say to the public out there, I'm not corrupt. I'm not taking any money from anybody. I never have, and I never will. How they take it, that's not for me to decide. But I just want to make that clear. So when you see me walking around, just know that it's not me.
Politicians and analysts have suggested that the commission is being used to settle political scores.
Speculation is one thing, but I think if we look back in hindsight, the history speaks for itself. If you look at how a lot of the issues have come to the fore, the people that have brought the issues to the fore, what has happened to people on either side of the political wranglings, I think that is an obvious case. And I've said it before and I'm saying it again, I believe I'm unfortunately caught in a political storm.
Zuma says he's willing to return if required by the Deputy Chief Justice.
This is my 4th time, so I have no issues with complying with the Commission. I hope I don't have to see Mrs. Zondo ever again, but if I have to, I've complied and I will comply.
Zuma has finished the second day of testimony now, and he probably will be subpoenaed in future, and then the questioning is going to get a lot tougher than it has been for these last 2 days. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, South Sudan's government says it's doing all it can to promote the rule of law in the country while prioritizing stability. This comes after rights group Amnesty International released a report claiming President Salva Kiir's government is encouraging impunity. CGTN's Patrick Oyet has more on this story.
South Sudan's government says its priority now is to stabilize the country and that thereafter it will be able to focus better on the rule of law and working on a constitutional system of government. Juba says it is trying to end violence in the country by implementing the current peace deal. President Salva Kiir's government says it is, however, prosecuting those it has powers over, such as its soldiers who are suspected of committing offenses. The majority of people who continue to suffer most from the 5-year conflict in South Sudan are children, women, and the elderly. It is now only a month to the scheduled formation of a new government in the country. That government would be known as Revitalized Government of National Unity, or RT-GONU.
As a method of cementing the peace and stability, we together with all stakeholders, including signatories, will form the TGONU come November 5. All these steps are intended to create a climate that will highly reduce and combat women and child's abuse.
South Sudan's government says when peace returns to the country, it would welcome setting up of a hybrid court to try perpetrators of violence. Juba says it is also working to reform the judiciary with the aim of making it more independent and efficient. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Right, let's turn our attention now to news further afield. Syria's Deputy Foreign Minister Faisal Mekdad says the Syrian government will defend all its territory and will not accept any form of occupation by foreign forces. This comes as Syria's Sana news agency reported that Turkey had bombed an area of the northeastern province of Hasaka, several kilometers from the border. Meanwhile, Turkey says it's completed preparations for a military invasion of northeast Syria to drive out Kurdish-led forces who were backed by the US to fight ISIL. The US has begun pulling troops back from the northeast Syrian border, an action that has been seen as giving Turkey a green light to move into the area. But US President Donald Trump has denied he's abandoned the Kurds, tweeting that any unforced or unnecessary fighting will be devastating to Turkey's economy. Our correspondent, Michelle Bar-David, is in the south of Turkey, near the border with Syria. We asked her about the situation on the ground.
This operation has been in the making for months now, and right now we're waiting for it to happen any minute now, any day now. We have back-to-back statements from Turkish officials. The latest one was from the Defense Ministry, once again emphasizing Turkey's stance regarding this operation. They have stated that the establishment of the safe zone is essential for Syrians to have a safe life by contributing to the stability and peace of the region. They've also mentioned that Turkish forces will never tolerate the establishment of a terror corridor at the Turkish border. So the emphasis here for Turkey is that this is for terrorism, to protect Turkey's national security, but also this operation is for the benefit of Syrians. That's what the Defense Ministry has emphasized. But they've also once again stated that they have all their positions ready, that armored units have been sent to the border, that tanks have been sent to the border. We've also seen that rocket launchers as well as Turkish artillery have also been positioned at the Turkish border here at this city of Şanlıurfa. So basically they're all waiting for the green light from Turkish military forces.
And indeed a delicate situation there. Let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, Germany warns of a repeat of the 2015 EU migration chaos. And a report by Kenya's Transport Authority says road accidents are up by 16% this year.
Syria with Mr. Jaime here.
The Great Wall of China. Ni hao.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. We start with migration news now. Germany has raised concerns over the resurgence of migrant arrivals. The country warned the influx could reach 2015 levels, which caught the European Union off guard. The German Interior Minister pushed for a common EU asylum policy. Meanwhile, French MPs remain divided as an immigration debate opened in Parliament. Some say the government does not need to crack down on immigration, but rather simplify the process for those who moved to France legally. Others feel France has abandoned the country by allowing in too many foreigners.
The French asylum system is saturated today, as if we were experiencing the delayed effects of the crisis of 2015 to 2016. The data is clear and undeniable. In 2018, France registered a record 123,000 asylum requests, so an increase of 22% on the previous year, even when at the same time requests were going down by 10% in the rest of Europe.
We know the difficulty of guarding a border without adding another. At the moment, we don't have organized and coherent and effective tools and regulations between member states to maintain the rights of asylum.
If we look at the IPCC projections, there's nothing but a trajectory of temperature rise of over 2 degrees, which has been largely reached already if we believe in the report. With just 2 degrees more, it's 287 million people who will be forced to leave their country, and I insist, not by choosing to leave their country, but because sometimes we talk about it as if it's tourism, that people are enthusiastic about the move. Women and children and everything they own in their arms, people who do not have any other options.
Now, after the latest migrant tragedy in the Mediterranean, fresh concerns have been raised about Tunisians joining the long list of those risking their lives to reach European shores. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi has more on this development.
The Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights has been monitoring the situation on behalf of the civil society and the families of Tunisian victims. The forum announced that the number of victims could rise in the next few days, because many boats have left Tunisia this week.
This is a new human tragedy in the Mediterranean. The number of irregular migrants is on the rise, and there are more victims every day. New boats have departed from Libya and also from Tunisia with women and children on board. At least 2 of them have capsized due to bad weather conditions.
African experts have voiced concern about the economic, social and security situation in many African states. Accordingly, young people are fleeing poverty, unemployment and instability.
The numbers and testimonies of migrants are alarming. There are many restrictions on people who want a new life abroad. The laws must change and open the door of legal migration. Many people are not aware of the dangers when they decide to risk their lives. This has a devastating impact on communities and societies.
Recent reports show that the flow of migrants will not stop. The Tunisian Ministry of Health announced that its departments are ready to intervene at any time.
We are ready to provide medical assistance and any form of support to the migrants. As doctors, we deal with human beings, and we don't look at their nationalities.
The Interior Ministry has announced that 3 separate illegal maritime border crossing attempts were thwarted by the Coast Guard in the coastal governorate of Nebel. Investigations have been initiated over these attempts. 23 irregular migrants, including foreign nationals, were arrested by a Coast Guard patrol in Manziltmim. 3 others, whose boat capsized, were rescued by the Coast Guard. 2 boats and sums of money in foreign currency were seized. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, for some analysis on this, a little earlier we spoke with Dr. Gamal Abdel Gawad, a senior research fellow with the Al Ahram Center for Political and Strategic Studies in Cairo, and he touched on what is drawing migrants to European shores and how Tunisia's economic woes are actually causing a rise in illegal migration.
The fact that just across the Mediterranean Sea there is another society, European societies, where the standard of living are much higher. The average income in sub-Saharan Africa is less 1/10 of the average per capita income in Europe. It is a time of media. It is a time of the internet where large number of people became aware of this inequality between the north and the south shores of the Mediterranean. So all those factors drive people to take the risk, even there is a chance of losing their life, but at the same time there is a chance, even if it has little chance, to make it to Europe and to migrate not only from a country to another country, from a continent to another continent, but from poverty to well-being. This is the difficult reality in African-European relationship. Across time, in the past decades, the economic situation in Tunisia has deteriorated actually due to the political upheaval and the political changes that Tunisia has went through. Tunisia is now struggling to introduce and implement economic reforms suggested by the IMF, and they're making partial success, but we all know, and in all societies, such a kind of reforms typically come with more pressure on the poor and vulnerable strata and of the society. So it is, yes, it is relatively better in Tunisia, but currently Tunisia is going through the difficult time of economic reform.
Now let's go to Kenya, where a report by the country's Transport Authority paints a grim picture. The National Transport Safety Authority says over 2,500 people lost their lives in road accidents between January and September this year. They added that unless immediate action is taken, more people will lose their lives on Kenyan roads. CGTN's Robert Nagila has more.
A vehicle joins the A104 highway just outside the capital, but two trucks, oblivious of oncoming traffic, decide to overtake anyway, narrowly avoiding an accident. It's a scene repeated over and over on Kenya's roads, many times with tragic consequences. The sheer disregard of traffic regulations on Kenyan roads is endemic. Now, the National Transport Safety Authority is sounding the alarm. In its latest status report, the authority says at least 2,591 people were killed in road accidents between January and September this year, a 16.8% increase from the same period last year. Pedestrians accounted for the highest number of those killed, with 1,005 deaths.
We can avoid many of these accidents if drivers were to be a little more careful. Issues of speeding, overtaking carelessly, results to such fatalities.
Other reasons given for the high rate of accidents in the country are drink driving and disregard of traffic laws, prompting this reaction from a cabinet minister at a recent conference on road safety.
If we decide we are not going to be orderly, we cannot expect then that we cannot have accidents, we cannot lose lives.
And for those like me who follow traffic regulations to the letter, driving in Nairobi is an extreme sport, especially at the traffic lights. Traffic lights alternate the right-of-way accorded to users. Green means proceed, amber, get ready to stop, and red means stop. Watch as these motorists jump the red light, oblivious of the dangers posed to pedestrians and oncoming traffic. Scare tactics by police, like placing wreckage by the roadside to force people to reduce speed, have not worked. Over the weekend, at least 13 people were killed in a tragic road accident after a bus collided with the truck. The month of December is fast approaching. It's when most Kenyans travel to celebrate the festive period with their families. It's also when the highest number of road accident fatalities are recorded. The government says it will soon launch a countrywide crackdown to restore sanity to the roads. But for the victims, it may be too little, too late. Robert Magila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, about 19 million Nigerians live with some form of disability. The majority experience various challenges in conducting their daily lives. But blogger and photojournalist Masara Kim has beaten the odds to become one of the best in his field. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam brings us his story.
Photojournalist Masara Kim doing what he does best, and with just one hand. Kim defied all the odds that life brought his way. He was only 6 years old when he lost his right arm to a life-threatening injury, and being from an extremely poor family made the situation even worse.
I was playing with my friends and fell down and had multiple fractures in my right arm, a little above the wrist. But my parents were too poor to afford quality health care, so I was taken to a local medical medicine store manned by untrained personnel. By the next 24 hours, when my parents could mobilize some resources to take me to a better hospital, I was told, or we were told, that the hand had been infected by tetanus. And by the next 24 hours, we were told that the infection was fast traveling to my chest, and in another 24 hours I was going to die because it was likely going to reach my lungs.
But Kim wouldn't settle for being pitied or bullied. He was determined to make the best of a bad situation.
Having tried the first time, the second and the third time, I realized that I was actually not disabled in the first place, because disability for me, having come to that realization, was simply the inability of the mind to innovate, the inability of the mind to create.
And that has finally paid off. Kim is reputed as one of the best in his field in north-central Plateau State. He's bagged several recognitions for his works. Not just that, he's employing and inspiring several other journalists as well.
Since the very time he got me engaged in this system, honestly, there has been a whole lot of great improvement, and of course the whole wealth of ideas that I had in mind but I could not bring to light, he has actually harnessed those things.
In spite of his achievements so far, Kim is not resting on his oars. He hopes to be a leading media mogul in Africa, one that would bring a solution to the current problem of media imperialism. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN Plateau, Nigeria.
Your business news up next with Roman Young.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in business. Severe drought is taking its toll on Zimbabwe's fragile economy. We'll explore the latest damage. And hopes of a deal for the UK to exit the EU are fading out pretty fast. All that and more is coming up next.
The newly upgraded CGTN website offers optimized coverage of China and international affairs, as well as distinct voices from around the globe. Be the first to know the biggest political news and discover the background to the major decisions. Decode China with a different perspective and get a better understanding of how China sees the world. Go beyond the news with sharp opinions on the events shaping today's world and reveal a China you have never seen before. Listen to entrepreneurs for in-depth analysis of the economy and touch the pulse of new technology via our hands-on videos. Travel back in time with CGTN to learn about China's past and immerse yourself in Chinese culture to discover the stories behind Kung Fu. Get the latest news on Chinese lifestyle, including travel, sports, and nature. Regular productions including Ask China put high-ranking officials on the spot. while C-Lab presents new ways of storytelling via cutting-edge technologies, and Global Stringer delivers unique videos from China and beyond. Take a look at the world from a different angle. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's focus on Zimbabwe. Its economy is forecast to contract by up to 6% this year. Now, the bulk of that decrease is attributable to severe drought that has been taking quite the toll on the country. According to a report by the country's finance ministry, Zimbabwe's month-on-month inflation rate is set to fall to around 10% by December, before then easing to about 2.3% month-on-month at the end of 2020. The economy is currently grappling with the worst crisis it's had in a decade. According to international estimates, nearly 8.5 million people in Zimbabwe alone are facing uncertain food supplies. In attempts to now fix this, President Emmerson Mnangagwa's government has started to buy grain from markets abroad. However, Zimbabwe is in a race against time and it has very limited financial resources. Over in East Africa, Kenya's government is set to establish an additional one-stop border post along its frontier with Ethiopia. Now, the move is part of a broader set of measures aimed at facilitating additional revenues from the trade between the two neighbours. But according to Kenya's finance minister, the underutilisation of the country's current border post with Ethiopia in Moyale is a clear indication of tax evasion through the smuggling of goods across the border. That in turn has prompted him to direct Kenya's taxman to convene a regular multi-agency meeting with business owners along the region to curb this tax evasion problem. On to the delicate divorce called Brexit. Talks between the European Union and the UK were continuing in Brussels on Tuesday, despite comments by a Downing Street source that a deal on the UK's exit from the EU is essentially now impossible. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has more.
Britain is seeking to ease concerns about leaving the European Union without a deal. The European Union insists it still wants a deal with Britain as the country exits from the bloc.
From our side, what I can reiterate is that the EU position has not changed. We want a deal. We are working for a deal with the United Kingdom, and under no circumstances will we accept that the EU wants to do harm to the Good Friday Agreement. The purpose of our work is to protect it in all its dimensions and at all times.
Meanwhile, Britain's Parliament, where a majority of lawmakers have tried to prevent a no-deal Brexit, has demanded an update on the government's efforts to try to mitigate the disruption that leaving without a deal is expected to cause. In response, the government has published an update to those plans, a 155-page document entitled No Deal Readiness Report. The document covered steps taken on key issues like borders, citizens' rights, energy, industry and Northern Ireland. This while the bloc reiterated Britain's commitments in the event of a no-deal Brexit, emphasising that London is expected to honour the clauses agreed at the April 2019 European Council.
Our working assumption remains that the United Kingdom is leaving the EU on the 31st of October, as they have notified to us and as Prime Minister Johnson keeps reiterating. And again, the principle of sincere cooperation is a very important one that is not only in our EU treaties, but that is also contained in the April 2019 European Council conclusions.
With just 23 days before the United Kingdom is due to leave the bloc, the future of Brexit remains deeply uncertain, and both London and Brussels are positioning themselves to avoid blame for a delay or a disorderly no-deal Brexit. Tusk and EU Parliament head David Sassoli are in Berlin for talks with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Many diplomats, however, say the chances of a swift deal before October 31st are low. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
On to the business of aviation now. Uganda's national carrier received 2 more planes earlier this week on Monday, effectively doubling the size of the carrier's tiny fleet. The airline got 2 CRJ-900 aircraft from the Canadian manufacturer Bombardier. Each plane can handle up to about 72 passengers and their cargo. The carrier says it's considering expanding its destinations to include Kinshasa, Zanzibar, Lusaka Asmara, Hargeisa over in Somaliland, Djibouti and Addis Ababa. Uganda Airlines was relaunched this year in August, with the country very eager to take a slice of the region's growing aviation business, which is currently dominated by Ethiopian Airlines. Uganda Airlines also expects to get 2 more planes, Airbus A330neos, fairly soon. The first, in fact, should arrive by the end of the year and the second a few months later. London headquartered multinational HSBC is going to let go of up to 10,000 of its employees in a new round of cost-cutting measures. Now, the latest round of downsizing will target mostly high-paid roles, and they'll mainly be focused on shrinking the bank's operations in Europe. This news comes just a few weeks after the investment bank announced a previous firing of some 4,700 employees. It's about 2% of its global workforce. Now, these cuts also did coincide with the sudden and at least publicly unexplained exit of the company's former CEO. The new restructuring plan of the bank is being partly attributed to economic uncertainty due to an easing monetary policy cycle, unrest in its key Hong Kong market, Brexit, as well as the trade war between the United States and China, which is hurting growth around the world.
This may not be related too much to the situation in Hong Kong right now, because from the reports, they said the focus probably will be on Europe, because Europe are not performing well. So probably mainly the access will be on European business right now. So Hong Kong probably will be affecting the business later on. But I think in the meantime, they are just looking at the operations in Europe, because that is the side which is underperforming the whole company.
Also, the Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok has met with Saudi business owners at the headquarters of the Council of Saudi Chambers. At the outset of the meeting, he lauded the strategic ties between Saudi Arabia and Sudan, countries essentially across the opposite ends of the Red Sea. The Prime Minister said that the success of Saudi businesses in Sudan should help increase the confidence of other international investors. Sudan is currently Saudi Arabia's 7th most important trading partner. Investments in the country last year totaled $1.2 billion. At the same time, Sudan and Saudi Arabia are set to hold a joint economic forum. This comes as the two countries look to boost their trade and investment ties.
The change that has taken place in Sudan is profound, and it encompasses all aspects of life, including the creation of the suitable environment for investment in our country. We promise you that we will work with you to overcome all the difficulties and obstacles that were facing Saudi investors.
And finally, into Nigeria, conversations around imposing a tax on vacant housing is gaining momentum. Late last month, the UN housing official urged the Nigerian federal government to impose taxes on its unoccupied or vacant homes. Now, the move is part of a broader set of efforts to address Nigeria's severe housing shortage, as CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam now explains.
An abundance of luxury houses in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, and many more are still springing up. But a large number of them have remained vacant for years, and that's in spite of the country's massive housing shortfall, which stands at about 22 million housing units. Recently, the UN Special Rapporteur on the rights to adequate housing, Leila Nafara, recommended that taxes be imposed on vacant homes, and that has spurred a huge debate here. Housing development expert Festus Adebayo has spent over 2 decades advocating for better housing for Nigerian citizens. He laments that these vacant houses have been channels for money laundering.
Those who are advocating for that, majority of them are estate surveyors who are selling houses. The people we are talking about are those who looted Nigerian money. And instead of them keeping the money in the bank, have decided to invest the money in real estate. And whenever these houses are constructed, if the value of the cost of the houses is 50 million, they will put a price tag of 100 million, basically to tag the houses down. They don't want cash. They want the property to keep standing. By the way, they have property elsewhere where they are living. This one is just for the purpose of keeping money, because keeping the money in the bank will make the EFCC, the Economic Financial Organization, to pursue them and say they should explain where the money is from.
Aside vacant houses, The challenges facing the Nigerian property market are quite enormous, from costly property registration and construction to unfavorable laws. More so, only a few have access to mortgage financing. Specifically, only about 5% of the 13.7 million housing units are financed with a mortgage. As a result, housing remains far beyond the reach of the average Nigerian worker.
How many mortgage banks is in existence in Nigeria or recognized by the Central Bank of Nigeria? It's an issue. At 59, an ordinary Nigerian cannot walk to a mortgage bank and ask for loan to own a home. It's not possible. The double-digit interest rate is a burden.
Abating the acute housing deficit is one thing that would require a collective responsibility. It's estimated that about $400 billion would need to be invested for the next 25 years to bridge the housing gap. But first, advocates like Festus would want to see a total policy overhaul, one that would eliminate corruption in the system and further boost investors' confidence in the housing sector. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
I'll leave it there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. In global business, we'll be looking at scientists calling for more action on climate change across a range of African markets. All of that and plenty more coming your way live from one city that's likely to be affected by it in a big way, Dar es Salaam. See you at the top of the hour. For now, though, back to Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. We are still watching Africa Live. Let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. US jazz maestro Wynton Marsalis shares insights on jazz performance with aspiring musicians in South Africa.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's go to Algeria now, where ancient manuscripts are being carefully preserved by passionate custodians. The precious collection of over 14,000 manuscripts contains centuries of history. Let's take a look.
Here in the Algerian city of Gardaïa, you'll find pieces of the country's history. El Haj Said Mohammed has spent his life preserving these ancient manuscripts.
My modest personal contribution to the preservation efforts of old manuscripts represents nothing in front of the vast number of ancient manuscripts that have yet to be discovered. This effort embodied in the assembly came out of several libraries and other associations, and we have now reached more than 14,000 old manuscripts. Is this not a wonderful thing?
The Sheikh Abi Ishaq Ibrahim Tafayesh Heritage Association is internationally recognized for its preservation of ancient manuscripts. It is used by researchers and university students.
The oldest manuscripts we have here belong to the island of Jebba, Tunisia, which extends to 5 full centuries and is a religious jurisprudential manuscript, and it is of interest of many researchers and students here.
With so much history contained among the manuscripts, Mohammed plans to continue preserving them for future generations. Astatal, CGTN.
And to South Africa now, where American Grammy Award-winning trumpeter Wynton Marsalis and his band have been entertaining local fans with their unique jazz sound. The performance forms part of a major jazz festival held in the country. CGTN's Uche Okoronkwo has the story.
It was an electrifying performance at the Lincoln Center Orchestra in the township of Soweto. American Grammy-winning trumpeter Wynton Marsalis and his band kept fans on their feet. The audience also had a chance to learn the basics of jazz music.
Jazz teaches you to be yourself, and it gives you confidence, and it allows you to not be a person who is in a market. It allows you to be in a much larger group, and it also encourages you to maturity. Jazz does not look at you as if it's trying to sell something to you. It's trying to tell you something and communicate with you in a very honest and open way, and it includes many people.
The jazz maestro has been teaching jazz lessons throughout the U.S., earning him the nickname Professor of Swing. It is a craft that he began when he was just 18 years old.
I heard so many elementary school bands, like early in the morning. Sometimes I see a person at the concert, come talk to our band, you know. We meet at 6 o'clock. I'll be at 6 o'clock. You know, I'm gonna be in the club till 2:30. But if you call me, I'm gonna come. They will call me, somebody's mom or something, they call me 5:30. Yes. Come to our school. And in the early years, I would call schools and ask them if they wanted music, especially the black schools. They would know, we don't want the music. So I would talk to them and convince them they wanted the music, and I would come and do it. Then I became known for doing it.
Marsalis has so far produced over 80 records, which have sold worldwide.
I've been listening to Wynton for a long time, so he's one of our jazz heroes. So to finally see him face to face and be able to talk to him, it's a mind-blowing experience.
Jazz, I enjoy how free it is, and like you have the freedom to express yourself. Like there's so much space to be you and put yourself into the music and the way you're playing. And like there's so much complexity behind how you play, but then they still make it sound so simple, like when they reach that level of mastery.
The Grammy Award winner has also collaborated with various international artists, including Ghanaian master drummer Yakub Adi. Uche Okoronkwo, CGTN.
And coming up in your sports news, up next. South Africa stormed to the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup with a comprehensive 66-7 victory over Canada.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way.
Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
South Africa have stormed to the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup with a comprehensive 66-7 victory over Canada. Third-string scrum half Kobus Reinach scored a hat-trick of tries in 11 minutes as the Springboks celebrated their 500th test in style. South Africa ran in 6 tries in the first half at Kobe Misake Stadium, and Canada's woes deepened a couple of minutes before halftime when replacement lock Josh Larson was shown a red card for an illegal shoulder charge at a ruck. Canada then scored a deserved try through flank